Hey, welcome everyone to the first in-person work on climate success stories. I'm here with Noon. We're actually in the same program called Carbon 13, and we'll hear a bit more about it later. And I would also like to welcome Josh Shaeffer to the call. How's it going, Josh?
Hey guys, how are you?
And Josh works at Boomitra, and he's been a part of the Regen Act channel in Work on Climate for a long time. But we'll hear a bit more from him today as well. And Lena joins me as my co-host, so we'll kind of tag team and ask some questions. As always, feel free to pop into the chat and ask any questions if any come to your mind, and we'll have a little bit of a unstructured open Q&A toward the end of the call as well. And prior to that, we have a few questions that we prepared. Should we get started?
Yeah.
Great. So first question I have for you guys is, can you tell us a bit more about how you're working on climate in your current role? I'll let you go first, Josh, and then we can circle back to Noon.
Yeah, no, sure thing. So thanks for everyone for attending and you guys, the Work on Climate crew for the invite, and happy to spend the next hour with you guys talking about what I'm working on and how I got into this space and everything like that. So what I'm at Boomitra. What we're currently doing is we're using remote sensing to understand soil carbon and then reward farmers, landowners, ranchers, et cetera, for improved practices. So we're kind of I would say, almost full service project developer with unique IP around how we do remote sensing. That's understanding that top 30 centimeters or 1 foot in soil and what's taking place in the soil carbon. Not obviously, many of you have probably heard terms like regenerative agriculture or improved agriculture, sustainable agriculture, climate friendly, climate smart, you name it. As long as we're doing better practices than conventional agriculture, this is what we're looking for and encouraging and rewarding through carbon markets. As you may have seen, there's numerous companies right now that have just got very large amounts of funding in this space, and it's really blowing up quite large. So our unique value proposition and then what I'm doing, I'll explain a bit more about what I'm doing there, is how we monitor the soil carbon, and then also we work directly with partners, not just with landowners direct. We work through partners to have access to helping hopefully millions of smallholder farms and larger farms as well. But we're working in a lot of developing countries as well, which is pretty cool. Whether that's India, I have a major project in Mexico. We're getting some stuff going in Kenya and Tanzania, Argentina, Brazil. So it's pretty awesome what we're able to do in these developing countries. Of course, US is a market we want to tap into. It's very complicated. It's very competitive as well. And so what I'm doing over at Boomitra is I'm heading up global partnerships and business development. So what does that mean? That means I'm the one, helping bring in these partners and working with their network to help their farmers be eligible for the programs that we're going to put forth. All of our projects that we're doing, they'll be listed on Verra. Verra is the world's largest carbon body registry. I think they do about 60 to 70% of the carbon credits that are issued from an annual basis. And we really like their program and what they're doing. And this also embraces our technology, which is, again, kind of on let's call it on the cutting edge side of things as well. So I could go off all day on this topic, but I'll stop there and pass it over back to Utkarsh.
Thanks, Josh. That was very enlightening, and I'm sure the group will have some more follow-up questions for you. And I'd love to dive a bit deeper into the soil carbon stuff as well. But let me circle to Noon and ask you the same question. How are you working on climate at the moment?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question. Thanks for having me here. It's so exciting. And it's so exciting to be doing this in person.
Yeah.
We're outside, but we're loving life. I think I'm certainly at a much earlier stage than Joshua here. Kind of like what I'm doing is a bit more meta, I guess, as it were. So I'm kind of part of this Carbon 13 program, which you're also in. We're in possibly week 4 now. Mm-hmm. And so as part of that, just like everyone else that's in this cohort 3, I'm just trying to learn about the space and just kind of find the areas where someone like me, don't know if you heard that drama outside here, where someone like me will kind of fit in. So my background is a programmer. So I've been a programmer for 20 years or so. And so, yeah, I'm kind of just working with this group of people, trying to learn about the ideas they have and the areas that they're passionate about, and find out where I can fit.
Yeah, excellent. And so we deliberately kind of wanted to have a broader spectrum. So for the audience here, they are in various stages of their transition into climate work. And so, feel free if you have any questions. I think Noon, as you mentioned, is toward the earlier parts of it. And then Josh, of course, is quite actively working on solar carbon at the moment. The next question is a bit more on the motivation side. Again, I'll ask it to you first, Josh, and then Noon, I can circle back to you. So what prompted you to work on climate?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this is why everybody's here, hopefully. I mean, obviously, besides the fact there's a ton of opportunities. Not for me, I mean, this has been a topic that I've cared about ever since I was a kid, but I just didn't see my career at the time hadn't necessarily been following that path. And so I'd been working the last 10, 15 years, let's say, in tech, but more like pure tech. It was stuff I liked, apps that we were doing health and fitness. And then I ended up working at the last big large company I was working at was Adidas. But while I loved the brand, I was just a tennis and soccer player growing up, so it really resonated with me. I didn't have the sustainability chops, let's say, for them. So I was, kind of pigeonholed over into e-com, digital strategy, things that I had a background in, which was great. And I enjoyed like helping the team grow and developing partnerships and making our tech stack better. But it was just, I was missing out on a lot of the stuff that I really wanted to be doing. I'd occasionally get to do a few things, but it'd be like outside the box. This wasn't like the 80-20 where at Google does, where, some folks there actually spend 20% of their time on their projects. I would try to do some things that were like kind of cool. So like one guy and I, we set up, or we had the idea behind Run for the Oceans, which was with Adidas had something called the Parlay line. That's where they were using recycled plastic that would end up in the ocean from beaches and collection centers right along the coastlines in countries. So we were able to do some things, but it wasn't really fulfilling in the sense that I wasn't spending 24/7, or my full-time gig was not focused on the environment. And I don't even like to use the term sustainability personally, because we don't lead sustainable lifestyles. But nonetheless, so then, as I kind of saw the writing on the wall for my job there, and just like I want to be passionate about something I do, I started just to say, hey, this is the pivot I want to make. I'm at the point in my career where I miss working with startups and like having, the ability to wear various hats, the ability to like really kind of have a footprint on a company and really help them kind of go from 0 to 60, or at least, kind of start to get to that scale. And so then I just started, I saw work on climate. I joined a bunch of these communities and I became very active. I was interested in too many things probably at the start, because everything's a shiny object in climate, which we can talk about later on, like these types of things later. But, having a little bit of a background in agriculture, my family has a ranch. So even though I wasn't an operator, I had an understanding of it. And I'm really passionate about the whole food and ag space. So once I started kind of focusing there, I volunteered to run the regenerative agriculture channel, which still exists. We're less active partially because myself and a couple of the other guys that started it are either full-time or just, unable to do as much as we'd like, as we were hosting webinars on a monthly basis. But yeah, so then I just got into that deeper and deeper. And that's when I really started to like network and find the opportunities that I was interested in pursuing. And and that's kind of how I pivoted from, very comfy corporate job. And I know I could go make 2 to 3 times more money plugging in at a Meta or a Facebook or, a big tech company. But that's just not where my interest lies any longer. And it's just like it's an existential crisis. And, I think it's great. It's nice to see folks here, and like, it's kind of an all hands on deck. And I don't think there's any bad solutions. I think as long as you're in this doing something, it's heartening to see that there's so many folks that are wanting to do this. And like now the community is almost 10,000 people. When I started, it was just, 100, 200 people, or was part of the Slack group on work on climate.
Excellent. Yeah. How about you, Noon? What first prompted you to work in climate or what prompted your interest in the space?
Yeah, I think for me it was a couple of things. I've kind of been reading. I read a lot, and I read these books. And maybe some people know Barry Lopez has a couple of really nice books, Horizon and Arctic Dreams, and they're just very poetic and expressive, and they kind of made me think about, well, just life a lot. But I remember one specific moment that was it's very odd. I don't know if people know Twitch. People watch people play games, and sometimes people watch people write computer programs, which I thought was crazy because I do that for a job. Why would I want to watch someone do that? Yet I did watch someone do that. And as I was watching him do that, near the end of his video, he says, also, I've decided to retire from this work to focus on the climate. And I was really inspired for some reason, because this was just in like a really super niche part of the programming world, and it was just really nice to see this person who clearly had an audience, clearly had a passion, and was just like, you know what, this is not enough now. Like, I need to quit my job and dedicate all my time to this thing. And that sat away in the back of my mind for a while, but it just made me, like, inspired me to do lots more reading. And in the end, probably through work on climate, like Josh was saying, I joined several Slack groups. Through one of them is where I found this carbon 13 thing. And yeah, it was kind of a combination of all that stuff that led me here.
Awesome. Lena, any questions from you?
Yeah, and I guess following up on that last question from Utkarsh, no, we'll start with you. What's your, in your opinion, why is it a good time for people to work on climate?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there's like several reasons, right? Like kind of one sad and annoying reason, but also inspiring reason, partly, is I guess there's lots of money. People are trying to throw money at this thing. So like if you want to, start a business, or, if you're wondering if companies are hiring, kind of what I learned is like, yes, people definitely want to throw money at this. And there are hundreds of companies hiring all the time. So I have to say I was very surprised by that. I didn't quite realize it. And I think the more stressful reason is like, it's just essential. I kind of watch people talking about like, oh, well, like maybe in the future, people just talking about the future as if it's going to continue progressing normally. And my understanding is that it will not. Like, it's not that you will simply you'll be able to shop locally or something. It's like, I think literally every person has to be making some effort to change. And I think everyone can do that in different ways, but that's also partly what motivated me. It's like, I just literally can't keep my present life.
Yeah, and I mean, to echo that, I hate to lead with money as well, but I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of money that's flowing into the space. And I think that's awesome. Personally, I welcome more and more of it. I don't know if valuations are in line, but that's a different conversation in many cases. I mean, I'm in carbon. There's been some crazy announcements that have been made in the last week or two. But I'm not going to say no to, folks throwing money in there. But I think now it's never been easier to get funding. And I think part of that is not because necessarily what government is doing, but I think what business is doing, what larger businesses are doing and leading on a more of a macro level. Everybody now has ESG commitments. You go to science-based targets, there's 2,500 plus companies that will try to keep things at 1.5, but let's be honest, 2 degrees kind of type of thing. So they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're willing to, make the investments that they need to decarbonize and then offset where they can't. And, not all these companies, many of these companies have investment arms as well, and they're funding sustainable ventures, whether it's a Unilever, whether it's, I mean, you can name the company and they literally have some kind of investment arm that are funding, especially a lot of times, things that are, again, more regenerative, sustainable, more eco-friendly. And so there's more and more venture funds. People have made a lot of money. Celebrities are throwing money into this all the time now, whether it's Robert Downey Jr., Leo DiCaprio, you name it. And people have access to this, and it's not that hard to get, it's not, I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it's never been more accessible to fund these types of things. And I think part of this is also like there's this growing sentiment of consumer demand. You hear this from younger generations, and then you also hear it from older generations. But the problem, of course, is probably the Gen Xers and the early baby boomers. They're the still ones leading this like really plush life and comfy life, et cetera. But the demand is changing. You see a lot of reports. I still think that they're not always accurate because people technically don't want to pay for it, but they say they will. So there's still that disconnect that takes place. And so like I think the stars are finally starting to line. I don't think this is 2008, 2009 again, where there was a bunch of money was going into the space. And literally they take one example of one company, Solyndra, and like crushed climate for a decade. I think now there's going to be plenty of electric car failures, but it's not going to all of a sudden stop a movement or stop whatever it's going to be. So you just the night and day, and we're talking about it. There's more disasters. There's more everything. It just now is part of the common vernacular, the theme. We're talking about climate. We're talking about the changes, and we're seeing the changes. 10 years ago it was bad, but it's nothing like it is now. So I think that's also some key reasons on why now.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add one other thing, which I think is interesting. I think because kind of adding, these greenhouse gases to the atmosphere has this kind of cumulative effect. It's always much more effective to do something early than later. So kind of like the sooner you make a change, it has this very compounding impact. It's kind of like a technical argument why you also might want to kind of just do something, even if it's hard to think about what.
We have a raised hand, Liam.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Liam.
Hey guys, I put my camera on, but I've got hay fever and my face is a mess, so you don't want to see that. But I'm calling in from the UK. I'm in a bit of a slightly unusual position where I'm not a developer, I'm not a dark green sustainability person. I'm pivoting out of financial services because they're the worst greenwashers in the world, and I want to come to the fight against climate change. My skill set is more of a project manager and a business analyst, and I'm struggling to find roles, particularly in Europe, where I can apply that skill set. So I could work within a startup or an established firm, helping them structure what they're doing, but those roles don't seem to come up. They need to be more development or product. I could do product, but it's not my main gig. So I guess the question would be, do you guys see there being an increase in the demand for project type skills within the space? And then secondly, can you comment perhaps on the relative slowness of roles within Europe? Because I'm not seeing a huge amount of roles out there in the climate space. So yeah, two-part question, I guess.
Yeah, Josh, go for
it. Yeah, so I think across the board in climate related jobs, project management, product management, it's all increasing. Okay, so that's the good news. Next, I mean, again, and this is just having worked for 15, 20 years almost. It's harder to just jump into a bigger company. And actually, this is where I do think Europe is leading from a large company perspective versus a startup perspective. But that's just the way Europe's generally been, unfortunately. I mean, look at tech, you can only name Spotify, right? There's not really many large companies that come out of Europe. There's a ton of established brands and whatnot that are leading the charge on climate. More so than in the US, but from a startup perspective, it's different. Look, the jobs are there. And also, one of the things that like my job wasn't listed, right? And the best jobs, generally speaking, especially with startups, they're not going to be on their job career page because they may not know they've needed you because you've already started talking to them or having those conversations before that. So I'm a huge believer in like the outreach and now in Zoom, it's never been easy to have that conversational conversation, like the old coffee chat or whatever they called it, to start to get to know these folks and like learn. But you have to pick a lane, and that's one of the things I think is what I alluded to earlier. Is everything's gonna sound like awesome, but if you're applying for an autonomous vehicle startup, and then you're looking at soil carbon, and then you're looking at battery packs and like grids and everything else, I just think like that's all great, but if you're not like super well read and understand like the industry or something very, very well, especially if you haven't been doing that for years and years and years and years, if you're going to pivot into that, even if it's climate, like which part of climate, because it literally touches everything.
Yeah, you're
right?
spot on. You're absolutely, when you said that earlier on, it rang a bell because, you know, I've been looking for roles in my place in the world for about 6-7 months now. And it's been really fun. But, you know, I'm reading about EV strategy, about batteries every day. I'm learning about carbon calculators, and it's all amazing. But, you know, there's a limit to my intellectual capacity, and I can't become an expert on all of it. So I'm in that place now where I need to pick my lane. I have been looking at more the kind of reporting side, so kind of TCFD type stuff, because that kind of lends to my previous experience. So I may focus on that, but yeah, your advice is really quite solid. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and the way I see it, and then I'll just push it back over, is like you could still have like that 10% of your time where you're interested in reading about what's going on in the space, but the other part you got to really kind of, like I said, just like, okay, I'm going to deep dive on this topic. And I noticed, I think Will's on this call as well. He helps me lead the Regen Ag channel. You know, I known about this. I'd been reading about it, but I think also by like stepping up and volunteering to do something, like we learned a lot. We put together starter kits. You start to focus on who the players are, and you're literally by de facto, you're almost becoming a thought leader, right? Just by spending the time doing this and volunteering and doing some of those things that you otherwise wouldn't be if you're just reading, you know, Axios climate newsletters that come out every day, or GreenBiz or whatever it may be. So yeah, and then with Europe, I mean, you're going to have amazing companies that are looking for ESG folks always. But again, startups, you know, hopefully there's going to be more and more, and I think there are. But again, get the right newsletters and start reaching out to them, and be thoughtful on how you do so, about how you could, like, you know, either position yourself to help them. And it's not just about like, I need a job. It's like, how can I help you? I mean, I think it's also how you frame it and how you reach out, and then how you then, of course, showcase what you're able to do.
That's brilliant. I really appreciate that, Josh. And if anybody's got any tips for newsletters, please drop me a chat or on the Slack channel. I'd be really appreciated. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I just kind of want to, like, it seems to me I've seen lots of project manager jobs. Like, I see no particular reason that there wouldn't be lots of those jobs. I feel like I've seen lots when I've kind of been looking around. But I also kind of want to empathize. I think the thing that I found a bit hard about trying to switch into the climate space is like, I have no real track record in this area. And I think that I have kind of, maybe I shouldn't have been surprised by this, but there's a lot of people that do, you know, and so I think it's like, what I've tried to kind of work out how to communicate is like, well, what have I been doing with my time? You know, like, I've been working for a while. Hopefully I've been doing something moderately of interest to people.
Yeah.
You know, communicate that to them in a way that they care about. Like, I'm not saying I know how to do it, but that sure. I'm just empathizing with your struggle, as it were. Like, I've kind of found it also challenging.
Well, I know I'm not alone, so that's definitely been super useful. Thank you.
Another question from me would be, when you, like, before your current role, did you look for like specifically climate oriented positions, or was it a broader search?
Was this for me or for Josh?
I guess any of you could start. Yeah, since the last question.
So for me, actually, my job before the one I have presently wasn't climate related at all. It was a much more irrelevant topic around quantum computing, and so I kind of from there, honestly, I just got another job in programming, so I haven't been looking for climate related jobs, honestly, that much. So I think this is kind of why I wanted to enter Carbon 13 and just get a feel for, like, well, what does the industry look like, at least from the entrepreneurship side, you know, and then find out how to kind of collaborate with people from there. That's my experience.
Yeah, no, I mean, I knew I wanted to work on climate since I left my corporate job Jan 2020. So right before COVID, I took a couple months downtime and then COVID happened. And then that I actually found that was a great time to start learning. However, I mean, this wasn't like a straight line. It took me about a year to really find something I was excited about and interested in. And I would get distracted because, you know, I would just drop my resume for a health and fitness type thing and I'd have an interview. And whereas on the other side, I was having to be much more thoughtful and have a different strategy. And, you know, I was very tempted to just go back to what I knew because, you know, I could earn a little bit more money. You know, I could pick and choose a bit easier where I wanted to go. But then, you know, I just answered myself that question is like, when are you finally going to, you know, get your ass into climate or do something you actually care about and are passionate about? You know, and so I kind of put my feet to the fire and just decided that I'm going to stop looking at all these other jobs, you know, that, you know, kept coming up, you know, on job alerts or, you know, people would ping you on LinkedIn saying you're a good fit for this or whatever, and just singularly focus. And then again, once you focus within that, kind of like I keep saying that, focus in your lane or find a lane that you really are passionate about that. And I think that shows. Like if I'm sitting here and talking about something I'm interested in, it's then something that different than I'm passionate about. And I think employers can see that. And especially if you're talking to startups, which I think many of you probably will be, like, if you really care, like, you know, whether you're, you know, going to be doing their a marketing or whether you're going to be an engineer, I mean, you know, you should, the people in this industry right now are, you know, wearing it the heart on their sleeve. And I think that that's also important. So I think people can see through if you're faking it and you're just doing this because like, oh, I care about climate. Well, you know, show you do. And I think that can come when I talk to people, you can tell like, oh, these people, and I work with a lot of NGOs now, and these guys are some of the smartest freaking people out there. Okay. And they're making less money, but they love what they do. They care about the people, they care about the planet, they care about all of these things, they care about conservation. And it's, you know, for me, seeing all these things and talking to these folks is just, it's incredible to know what their work is. And it's sad that they're not being rewarded as much as they should be, but they do that and they make it work and they're having the greatest impact. And so that's, you know, from my side, it's like, I know that this is the space that I want to be in. And, you know, you guys, it's the jobs are there. And again, the jobs that you see are just part of the jobs that are needed, because even like our company, maybe we have a jobs board. I don't know. I never look, but I've hired 2 people, right, on my team, and we didn't have job listings. Okay. It's just either people wrote on the website, contact us. The gentleman we just hired in Mexico, he just reached out saying, hey, you know, if you need any help on carbon markets and agriculture in Latin America, let me know. Talk to him and everything else. And it was been pretty awesome. And he just started, actually today is his first day, but you know, he was starting to do stuff ahead of time. How many people are taking calls and doing this before you start your next job? It's because he cares so much. And again, you can't, you know, you could see through that, I feel, on an interview if you're a decent interviewer or whatnot. But yeah, so just a few more thoughts there.
I guess many people can relate to this. You know that you want to work on climate, you know, but you constantly get distracted by other authors and just you got to be like laser focused on. Yeah, and I can definitely relate to it. That's what happened to me.
So we're just halfway mark. So I'll open up the floor to any questions that people might have, and we have a few that we'd like to ask as well. But please feel free to raise your hand if you would like to ask it yourself, or you can send it over the chat and we'll read it out for the group. So before we get to Yishan's question, I just had one question that I wanted to ask to both of you. So specifically, based on your experience, you know, in engineering, and Josh, your prior experience as well, were there any like misconceptions that you yourself fell prey to before you started, you know, along this climate journey? Like, are there any misconceptions that you cleared up since then that maybe other people have as well?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, honestly, probably one of the biggest ones for me is that I didn't realize the industry was so large. I think that's what I just honestly had no idea about. I was just genuinely like shocked and kind of excited, and also kind of wanting to understand a bit more, like, well, if they've been around for so long, like, what's their impact? But that to me was the biggest misconception. Like, I kind of assumed when I would start looking, there would be like 5 companies. But exactly as Josh is saying, there's like not only 500 or 5,000 companies, but like a significant portion of them have money that they want to invest in wacky ideas, and I think if you can kind of just find the right people to talk to or present, find the right space, I think you can get access to that. And all they want is, all they want, but is this kind of standard thing that people want when they invest in something, is just this vague promise that you're going to try your best. You've got a team that's moderately coherent. Like, that's what we're trying to do at Carbon 13, is like get together and form around an idea, however vague or specific it is. I think that was the biggest surprise to me, that like there's lots of appetite for that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, you guys just apply, subscribed. I put a few. I mean, that's not. I mean, adds more folks, so everybody has the things that they can sign up for. Again, startups or big companies. There's more and more startups. Follow the angel lists. Follow all these different places. And it's just off the top of my head without even looking through what I still receive. Now I'm so busy that I'm just mostly hitting delete. Also set up Google alerts. For like industries and things that so you get that that curated list of stories on a daily basis, so you can kind of go through there and see, like, again, that's what I'm saying, is you can't make an alert for everything, but whether it's certain things, companies getting funded, B, you don't have to get that every day, but see what it is and set those things up so you're aware of things that are happening. And then utilize LinkedIn and follow people. You may not connect with them directly right away, but follow people that are thought leaders that you can learn from and whatnot. And then you're just going to start to see and join groups on LinkedIn and do all those different things and connect, and make sure you're being thoughtful when you connect. Like, unless I feel like someone can benefit me, unless they've written me a nice message on the reason why they want to connect, I'm probably not going to connect with you. Because otherwise it's just one more connection that I don't know how it's going to benefit anyone. But the surprising thing is also the people in the space are really nice, and they're willing to take the time if you come at them with like a thoughtful message, again, saying, hey, I'd like to learn about what you guys are doing here or whatnot. They're more likely than not to accept something. They might be too busy, but I don't think that there's any bad intent on why they're not getting back to you. So again, you're going to have to, and don't be dissuaded after you get no response or after 100 no's. I mean, you got to just keep kind of like doing that. But I found that some folks were super accessible. I was able to use my network or ask to talk to VPs of sustainability at large companies. Now, while that didn't necessarily work out for me, you just have to pursue all these different avenues. So the people are generally friendly in this space. The jobs are there. What I said earlier is you're only going to see the tip of the iceberg on what's posted. You're not going to know the rest until you reach out. And don't just like do the spray and pray. You have to be like really thoughtful, because otherwise, if you're just sending out 20 resumes, I'd rather send out 2 resumes a day or 2 notes a day than 20. If it's, trying to go through somebody, writing something really nice, showing that you care, and doing those types of things. So yeah, so again, people are great, and there's a ridiculous amount of jobs.
Awesome. We have a question from Yishan on the chat. How do you recommend prioritizing going into a specific climate area that someone really cares about versus an area that you perceive as less impactful to get your foot in the climate space first?
Yeah, I have a thought about this one, and it kind of disagrees a bit with Josh with kind of what you were just saying. Is like, I am not totally convinced on like sticking to one thing, and the reason that I feel that, and maybe this is just me myself, but I feel like if other people are excited, I can get very excited. And so like, I feel like, well, I can look around at something, and if someone's like all about ocean, seaweed, whatever or something, I know literally nothing about it. But if I do have something that I can bring to that table, then I can get exceptionally excited. And so me personally, I find I can't quite commit to one exact thing, because I just don't honestly know the answer, at least for myself. I don't feel like I have a point where I'm settled, where I'm like, this is absolutely what I'm going to do in the climate space, and like this is where I'm going to go. So my kind of approach is to be a little bit more broad, and it's very possible that that hurts me, right? I don't honestly know, but that's my approach in this area, which is like, well, I see what someone's working on, then I see, well, can I get excited about it? Like probably I can, but sometimes I can't, and then that's okay. Like that's great to factor it down a little bit. So yeah, that's my perspective.
Also, Noon, I want to make clear that this is not a hard and fast rule. I say get your foot in the door any way you can, and while you and start to develop and get that shift in your CV, in your LinkedIn experience, on your resume, and get in that, and you can still be an expert in the space that you really care about and do a lot of your outside reading, but you need to kind of get your feet wet. So I'd say, like, don't wait 2 years to get that dream job in the space that one place you really want. Do that other thing and get started, and hell, maybe you do really love that. But I'm just saying, is I do think when you're submitting for roles and you're writing your cover letters and you're doing the things, if you're trying to do that for 10 different things within climate, it's going to be very difficult and hard to manage. Whereas if you just find those 1 or 2 or 3 parts of within climate that you're like more interested about, like for me, it was food waste, ag, and also some ocean stuff as well, because I used to mentor startups that went through Sustainable Ocean Alliance in San Francisco. So, get involved. And also that's another thing, what you can do is like think about ways that you can get involved. Is there things that you can do to, like, again, volunteer or whatever, to get that shift on your CV, showing that you're doing something in the space writ large, and then you have the time to do that. Don't wait. I mean, actions speak louder than words. In this case, I'm psyched with where I'm at, but I noticed when I was going through this in 2020, it was too many shiny objects, as I said before, and then I honed it down and I had a lot more success. And at the same time, I was doing a ton of advising for startups. This is like literally either free or just kind of like equity-based advising for early stage startups. Around circularity, around other topics that I care about. I mean, I'm like the anti-plastic guy, but I also don't know anything about materials that much. So it wasn't necessarily a strong suit. However, I could help them a bit with like early on, but then they kind of get beyond where I could be useful or help them any longer, because, they were so niche on something that I just kind of, unless I was doing that day in and day out for them, I wasn't going to be able to necessarily have that skill set that could benefit them, or that industry knowledge.
Stanley, you had a question, I think, here, but I'm not sure what it's in reference to. Would you like to ask it?
If it's about, I think maybe it's about the Bliss campaign jobs.
I think it's about jobs. Yeah, I think he posted that when it was about jobs and asking why some aren't listed.
I mean, it's just hard. I mean, especially small startups. I mean, just writing a job rec. I mean, it takes time, and then posting it, and then being ready to hire and doing all those things. I mean, you don't have a formal HR department until you're probably a Series A, a well-funded Series A company, and you have, $10 million plus in the bank of funding or more. It's really difficult. And when you're in that pre-seed seed round, we don't have. I mean, we're going to probably do a Series A at some point, but we don't have a formal HR. I'm the one, if it's something comes in from the BD perspective, partnerships perspective, I'm, vetting that, or the COO or the CEO. Just for me, it takes too much time out of my day to formally do that. And then also, I can tell you this, it's overwhelming. You're going to get 100 responses. And how do you siphon through all that? So that's what I'm saying. Like, unless you have a formal department to deal with all these things, reach out. You never know where they need folks. And especially if it's something you're interested in. Again, I've said that over and over again, but it's just like the early stage companies, they may not know what they need, but they may say, that person's awesome. I want them working for our team somehow, some way. And you'll figure it out. I mean, that's the beauty of all this stuff.
I think I totally like that's been my experience at other companies is like it's very hard to recognize when you don't as soon as you need help is not when you recognize that you need help. Like it takes you a long time to recognize like, oh yeah, it would be great to have like a person with exactly these skills, or but it could probably also be these skills. And then yeah, I guess this is what would pay them and this is where they'd sit in the company. And there's like so much scope before that happens to make a connection with the company and talk to them and learn about them and then kind of go like, yes, like, oh yeah, I see you're really struggling with that. Like I can help out with that. And I mean, I think anyone that's been working for a while will be kind of familiar with this concept of like making space, you know, like you find a group of people and then you make your own space and find out where you want to work and you find out how to fit in. I've certainly done that at many companies over the years.
Yeah, I'll actually add something to that, to something that both of you said. So in my own experience, applying to a lot of companies before the carbon 13 stuff worked out, one thing that I noticed, echoing what Josh said, is my success rate for just hearing back from companies when I actually put in some effort and like wrote a cover letter was magnitudes higher than just like pinging out a resume. And that sort of makes sense because I used to be a hiring manager in like my non-climate related job. And, you know, you sort of have to put yourself in their shoes. Like this was like a Series B company and we had this like hiring tool, but it's literally like Tinder for candidates. Like you literally see a resume and there's like an arrow here and an arrow there, and you're just like going through the resumes one at a time, right? And I'll share like a very practical tip that like started working for me. So what I started doing is creating like a 1-page cover letter where I would, you know, put in some of the work to try and connect the dots. So like rather than outsourcing that cognitive load to like the hiring manager to try and figure out how my experience might like relate to what they're doing, I would just like spell it out. And then I would also put it in the same PDF as the resume, because a lot of times in these like hiring management softwares, you just see the resume face up, and the cover letter, even if there's a spot for it, is like an attachment that's also with it, right? So by just putting both of them in the same PDF and having the cover letter be the first page, I'm trying to firstly break up like the visual flow, right? Where it's like resume, oh, interesting, this is something else. So, you know, it's all about getting just eyes on it, right? And so it's not really about like people not wanting to read a resume. It's just that they're just too busy, you know, in these small companies. They have like 100 different things. So it's nothing personal. So the easier you can make it, I think the better it is. And I did start having like a lot more successes and just like getting the first conversation, you know, and that's really what it is. But anyway, I wanna leave the answers to the panel. I don't want to like add too much to it. Any questions from the audience?
Utkarsh, can I add something very quickly?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with your point that you should have something to show that you have relevant experience and something to connect the dots, but also sometimes you don't have it, and that's okay because you can gain it like really fast. So in my perspective, it's really important to show that you have passion for that. And people, as Josh mentioned, people notice it. If you are truly passionate about something, in this case, climate, yeah, even if you don't have experience, people will notice it.
Great. So we have one question on the chat, and then we have a question from Emily. So I think this one might be more relevant for you, Noon. On the chat from Maya. I'm wondering if data science in the climate science world uses a variety of coding languages, or if it's all mostly one language. Similarly, if there are any particular technical skills that seem useful for data scientists transitioning into climate work. I'm sure it varies a ton, but I'd love any insight you can offer.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can just, so I worked in AI for 5 years around that kind of teaching deep learning. And did some consulting, and I mean, as I'm sure you know, Maya, like basically Python is standard, you know, near as I can. And I just want to be clear, I don't know about like specific climate companies, but honestly, I can't see why they would be leaving the kind of Python ecosystem. And there's a few reasons for that, which is like, I think the most important aspect, almost the most important aspect of any data science project is kind of operationalizing it, like making it part of the decision-making process. It's very easy to do kind of once-off reports where you can't, maybe it's very hard to reproduce it or link it back to all these different data sets, or you don't even know how you arrived at the conclusion. And I think it's like the business of data science, like kind of business level data science these days, in my view, should certainly be on operationalization, like making it part of the business workflows. And like, for my money, you just can't do better than Python. What I can say is that I do know of a company here in Cambridge that uses Julia. And Julia has become popular in certain really niche ecosystems, just because it's quite fast. And it does have a similar kind of workflow process to Python. So I think like, and one of the things I found useful in my programming experience is to have something a little bit quirky. And I think these days, if you were to say like, well, I know Python, also I know Julia, my feeling is that people would probably be quite excited about that.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I've seen Julia around a little bit, but it's still like, I don't know, I work in astrophysics currently and it's used a little, but it's mostly Python here still.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just hired a person or two in Python, and we're always looking for geospatial folks, and the whole machine learning AI topic, we're doing that for soil carbon. So all those things are, front of mind for companies that are doing deep analysis on things. And then of course, hey, don't forget front end people. It has to look nice because we're creating dashboards. So everything, all that data has to be piped out there and look nice. Otherwise you're going to fall behind. I mean, people want to see it clean, concise, and everything else.
Emily?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to piggyback on Maya's question because I'm a soil scientist. I'm trying to transition into like a data science role, partly because I'm geographically restricted, but I have a lot of background with carbon cycling in soils and forests. And so I'm trying to train up as a data scientist. I'm also like, applying to jobs in the meantime, and I'm learning data science in Python, but sort of my long-term plan, if I don't get a job this summer, is to do one of these like fellowships in the fall. And I need to do a project for the fellowship outside of what I'm comfortable with. So I'm just wondering like what like special skills should I try to include in that if I'm like, I don't know, natural language processing, or I don't know, like what should I try and do? Because it can't be, soil carbon.
Honestly, I think Josh's point is very, very good, which is like the kind of the usability of AI and data science systems is extremely important and extremely underserved. So basically, like it's very easy to have a complicated model that makes a very sophisticated prediction, right? But the point is like, well, what? Like, so what? Like, how can I apply this like immediately? What can I change to get a different prediction? What are the boundaries of this prediction? What if I have like much more resources or way less resources or something like this? And kind of making these, I'm really excited about these kind of, decision systems that basically help people think about their problem. So I think I would really echo Josh, and it's like, if there's one like really nice quirk to add to the data science portfolio, it's really this kind of front end UX of AI, I kind of call it. And there's lots and lots of, I think there's a growing field of people thinking about it, but there is really, wild, like there's so much to do there. There's really so much to do. And I think you would really make a significant, like I think it would be a very interesting mix to see a data scientist come along and go like, here is a sophisticated model, but here is this very nice way to understand it and engage with it. And I don't think it's so infrequent to see people pull up both of those two things together. I don't know what your experience, Josh, is in that space, but yeah, sounds like a bit.
I mean, I don't have it, like, I unfortunately don't have like a really great, I would just be following trends and asking the people that I'm not very technical, to be honest. So I don't know all the languages. I've heard of them and whatnot. so I don't want to like really throw in my 2 cents there, except I know what I like to see. And like when you're going through it, like we have very crude results right now, and we're hoping to like make it a lot nicer, so it's a lot more understandable for folks. But you know, it's one of those things, is it's like I always think it's kind of like most of that stuff has to be done and written in the back end, but you don't forget to make it look nice, because that just the simple things like that for business side or marketing side, it's just like, you know, you want to understand everything that's going on and make data very clearly presented to folks.
But I think the important part is they also inform each other. So it's like the model should change based on what you can present to people and what they can interact with.
Mhm.
And I think this kind of iterative idea between those two things is just like so powerful, you know.
I wonder if I could quickly ask, do you have any examples of places that have done that? The one I can think of is like 538 in the US does like election polling, and you can normally like click through and select like, okay, what if this race turns out this way? How does that affect other things? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Or
There's like 3 blue, 1 brown. I think that they've got some great animations. Like, so a really technical one is distill.pub. Distill.pub is a I don't know if it's old now, but it's like there were these really sophisticated machine learning model kind of web pages, but showing you how to, like, they had lots of toggles basically, is the idea. And I think that's a really nice example. And I think, yeah, I'll try and, I had another one in my head, but it's gone. But distill.pub is definitely pretty good to look at.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a really helpful answer.
Yeah, no worries.
Any other questions on the line, or any questions from the audience? We have maybe time for one more that we can squeeze in. All right. I did have a slight add on to that, because I used to work as a product manager in you know, a data science application, but in healthcare tech. And I think that what you're saying is spot on, because from the PM perspective, it's really about kind of this almost realization of value, right? So if you build an amazing bit of data science in the background, right, and it's like the most amazing model, and it's predicting all of these things that people would find useful, if they're not able to interface with it and actually internalize that information, it's not going to lead to any changes in the real world, right? And if that doesn't happen, you're not going to have something to prove your ROI or whatever when it comes time to like renew the contract. So like this is very like, you know, product oriented, but there's the creation of the value, and then there's kind of like turning it from unrealized to realized value. And I think that's what like a lot of usability is sort of focused on. But it's very tricky for data science products, because you know, the products can be quite complicated, right? And so to simplify that, to distill it down to like something that end users can understand, I think is quite challenging. Any other questions from the audience? Some thank yous coming in as well. I guess I'll just give you guys, you know, I'll flip the question a bit and ask you, are there any ways in which Nuna and Josh, the broader climate community can help you? You've helped us so much with your insights, so I want to give you the opportunity to tell us, is there any way we can help you?
Josh, you go.
I don't know if it's about helping me. I mean, just keep doing stuff you guys are doing, and like talk about in your personal lives. Also, I think that's one of the things is people don't talk about climate enough. It's uncomfortable. Oh God, you drive an SUV. God forbid you talk about a Tesla or something like that. For me, I mean, not really, unless you guys know some major, you know, ag lands and farmer networks or whatever that are working on regenerative ag, then feel free to ping me. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just, you get my name's just spelled as it is. Yeah, but other than that, I mean, we're always looking for people, geospatial, especially as we're mapping soil carbon. So that's one thing. And, you know, pay attention to what we're doing, and maybe one day we'll probably have a jobs page. But you know, also we have a large engineering team in India, not just here in the States. It's more headquartersy and stuff like that. But yeah, anyways, Noon.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably just, I think like thinking back to the carbon 13 thing, one thing you and I have talked about with Utkarsh is just kind of like how much energy and motivation you get from seeing other people so excited and so passionate. And I think exactly as you said, Josh, like in my regular life, as it were, I don't get to talk to people in such an exciting, like find people that are so passionate that are trying to drop everything and do something. So I think like as a community, it feels like the best thing we can do for each other is just kind of like give ourselves permission to like care about it and get excited about it. You know what I mean? And just kind of like feel for people that can't switch jobs, but they want to be excited. It feels like everyone you talk to like kind of wants to do something but doesn't quite know how, and I think just simply talking about it makes everyone feel better, is my experience anyway.
Yeah, beautifully put. We are right at the top of the hour, so I just want to thank Josh and Noon for being with us today, sharing their insights, and thank you to the audience as well for your wonderful questions.